I am not the most emotional person. Now, I'm very empathetic, but I'm not a very sensitive person from like an emotional and crying standpoint, right? And I'm telling you this because what I'm about to tell you might sound heartless, but again, get it, see it from a bird's eye view. So around this summer, June 9th, my grandfather died, okay? Now, he'd been in a vegetative state for 10 years. 10 years. He was bedridden for 10 years, pretty much 10 years, if not maybe at least 8 of those 10 years on a bed. And watching his entire journey, from, this density onto another, watching him, cross over, it really changed my perception on death and dying and whatnot. I think most humans have a very unhealthy relationship with death. They don't understand it. They refuse to talk about it. They refuse to spend time around it. At the same time, I think it's given me a lot of clarity, right? Spending time thinking about death and what comes after this lifetime. It's given me a lot of clarity, even confidence, I'm not afraid of nonsense, I don't know that I'm afraid to die, things like that. This mentality has affected my swagger, right, and how I roll and how I'm just at ease with myself. This is another thing that, most people, had they been comfortable with, they would have been, their personalities would have been a little different. Everyone would have been a little bit more, less uptight, more forgiving, the list goes on. Now, going back to my grandfather, his last couple of days, he had been going in and out from the ER, right? He had been going in and out. So we had to put him in a nursing home that was close to his main hospital, right? So we're in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's the Emory St. Joseph in Atlanta. So we had to put him in a nursing home close by because he just kept going in and out of the hospital for those last couple, those last 6 months. Now, my grandfather has, he had 6 children, 5 girls, 1 boy, and I would always tell him, during his last couple, anytime we were around and they all happened, to be together, that was a very rare thing. I would tell them, guys, this is a blessing in disguise, right? Not many people get to say goodbye to their loved ones slowly, especially when you know what's imminent, what's coming. He's 90 years old. And I would always tell them, guys, this is a blessing. You guys are able to spend, these days with your dad and start preparing your minds for what's coming, this and that. And for the most part, they took it very well when it happened. Obviously, the emotions and when reality sets in, they get very emotional. But my grandmother, who's still around, she took it like a champ. She's probably the least emotional out of everyone in the family. She did her subtle crying, and it's very amazing to me how quick she became. She became at peace with everything. She's accepted it. I think she had done the work before, and she was always around him. She was the one who was always with him. They were in the same room, so the mourning process was different for her. Now, I want to talk about something that I noticed with my grandfather. First off, this death, the way humans see it, it's a fucking business, man. They milk the body. Once the person passes, they milk the body left and right. You gotta pay for the entire funeral, you gotta pick a casket, you gotta pay for the clothes, and you gotta everything, the tombstone. It's a massive business. I'm a very curious person, so after the funeral, I went on the internet. I think that the next 2 days after, I was on the internet just researching different morticians and picking their brains. And there's a mortician called Victor Sweeney who's got a very smooth mouthpiece, right? He's got a way of making death seem cool, if that makes sense, right? He talks about death in a relatable fashion that's not overly morbid. And I'm just like, dissecting him and some others and their perception of the human body, after the soul leaves. Not all of them are, super spiritual. I don't think any of them were. But one thing that they all mentioned was that it was very clear to them that the body that they were preparing, it lacked something, right? Something was missing, right, from that body. And for those people, for people who think we're just here and we're just in these random bodies, like, and that's that, there's more to it. Even folks like that who are not really the most spiritual people, they've got a different relationship with death. And the day my grandfather died, right, the 9th of June, we go to the hospital. Everyone kind of knew that his time was up. We knew he had a couple hours left. That morning, he was rushed to the hospital from the nursing home. And apparently he died in the ambulance, and they brought him back and they hooked him up to life support. So we all knew that his flame was about to shut down. So my brother and I, again, we're very curious individuals. So we go into the room where he was at, and we see him hooked up to life support and all that. And first off, the first thing we notice is his eyes. His eyes were gray. Like, they looked like this, okay? His eyes were gray, and I've never seen that before. I've seen people's eyes turn black. This was a very different color. It was very light. My grandfather had black eyes, like a normal African American. He had black eyes. His eyes were gray. And my intuition, people sometimes ask me, "Oh, Ross, how do you know this?" Sometimes, especially when you guys go long enough in your journey, there are certain things that will just come to you. I've learned not to apply my own logic to things and just take in what I receive. And as I'm looking at him, I'm looking at his eyes. By the way, he was brain dead. The doctors told us there was nothing there anymore. There was no brain activity. My brother and I were sitting there watching him. I'm like, "Yo, Stefan, like, his soul is literally trying to leave, right? His soul is anchored, and he's just anchored. His soul is anchored to the body." And we felt a presence there, right? Something was there, his soul, but it was trying to leave. It was still anchored, and obviously it was the life support, holding him longer than a natural death would have. He would have died a while ago if it wasn't for these human contraptions. He would have been gone. Okay, cool. We leave the room. Other family members come in, and they spend some time with him. 45, 50 minutes pass or so, and the doctors tell us that he's dead. So we go to the room, and my brother we both try to go in there first to see his body, just to really see what we notice, pay attention. Now, I don't want to make this seem like we're using my grandpa as an experiment, but we kind of are. We're very experimentative people, and we're just observers, and we're paying attention. And we wanted to be there first before, our cousins and family and his daughters came in there, crying, and with that energy, we wanted to be able to feel what the energy was like once he's gone. And obviously you go in there and the vibe is completely different. When his eyes were gray, you could feel a presence there. And once he was gone, just done. Like there was no energy signature whatsoever. So me being me, more so than my brother, I'm very clairsentient. And I immediately picked up on the lack of a presence there. There was nothing there. Now, this reaffirmed something to me. Now, a lot of people, they'll look at you and tell you, "Hey, no one knows what happens after death." Obviously, I couldn't tell you verbatim what happens after death. But I do know that there's more to just this physical reality, right? Where does a soul go back to now? If everything is energy, and you can't destroy energy, where does the soul that animated his vessel go to? Now, this can get much deeper. That's for different conversations. You have people who, believe in, star seeds and different densities and this and that. That's for a different conversation. But my realization right then and there, it just gave me confirmation, interesting. There's more to it. Now, after that, the ritual continues, right? They ritualize the body, they're crying and, oh, the body. But the body isn't what you had memories with, right? It's the soul. It's the soul that animated that body. It's the soul that created experiences. His soul is what created those experiences that they're crying over, and the viewing to me is just like, again, you have to go view there's a viewing before the funeral, and people are sitting there, looking at it. They just, to me, it might sound heartless, but I just feel like they milk it. They milk the body They milk the vessel, and we are not our bodies, but they milk it to the end. And it is what it is. You know, death is a business. Now, you guys have heard this saying, you know, it's everywhere. You hear this all the time. The eyes are the window into the soul. And looking at my grandfather, I always make eye contact with him when he's on the bed, and you know he'll look at you. You know, he had vascular dementia, so he couldn't talk or anything, but he'd look at you, and you could tell that there was some consciousness there. But looking at his eyes after going to the hospital and they were gray, there was not much there. You know, I'm looking at it, I'm like, there's no consciousness there. Like he's literally gone. But with their life support machine, they're just keeping him anchored. There's more to this reality than living and this and that and sensual pleasures, and then we die. There are people who probably watch this shit who literally believe that it's just that simple. Some of the dumbass comments that I get, you know, where you can tell the person is devoid of any active third eye, right? They're just completely calcified. You can just tell people, these people like that who believe that it's just, you know, physical and emotions, right? They completely ignore that there is a spiritual element to things. And these are oftentimes the people who don't understand what it is that I'm saying when I'm speaking, right? They can't realize it. They can't realize what I'm saying. And that's okay, right? They're on their own journey. They'll figure it out. A lesson that I've learned, you know, because you can learn something from everything. You can learn something from anything. And that's why right now at this point in my life, I'm an observer. I just observe everything without emotion, with my flawed logic. I do my best, right? I'm a human, but I do my best to keep it away and just observe what's going on, observe what I'm seeing, and let my higher self, right, my spiritual self, give me information, right? The second you start applying human logic, then you're watering down the message. And this gave me, my grandfather's passing gave me a lot of clarity regarding, concepts and thoughts that I've had regarding death. My brother and I, we both have a bad habit of being like, we'll look at someone in the eyes and be like, yo, there's nothing there. Like, we'll just do it all the time too, it's like, was there something there? I'm like, you talk about someone, I'm like, okay, was there something there? And like, is this person real? Are we talking about an NPC? Like, and no, there's nothing there. And why do we do that? It's like the eyes tell you everything. Is there someone home, right? Is there something there? One thing that I've learned, and I'll put it out there from an occult standpoint, from an esoteric standpoint, I may have mentioned this in one of my first early videos, maybe one of my first 10 videos that I uploaded. But if you want to know if someone's for you, you want to make eye contact. If you want to know someone's not for you, you want to make eye contact. Either or, that person is either going to get closer to you or they're going to instinctually grow further apart. You can't fake anything. When you're really looking into someone's eyes and taking them in, there's, information transmitting, right? From a metaphysical, spiritual standpoint. So you can read, it's what they call reading. So when you can take in a lot of information about an individual through just a gaze, right? That's why eye contact is kind of important. It's important to make it. It's kind of dangerous not to make eye contact. If someone is trying to harm you, you need to be able to hold eye contact and get that data, right? There are some people who are very Machiavellian and their body language won't hint at the fact that they're trying to harm you, but the eyes are telling you something else, right? You're receiving something. So, not making eye contact and, terrible posture when you're out in public and not look people. Now, don't be an idiot, Don't stare people, death stare like you're trying to fight, but take them in, There's a gaze. I think humans kind of know when people are staring at them from like a animosity standpoint, or they're trying to fight, and from like I'm just trying to see who you are standpoint. You know what I mean? It's a quick glance. But you're really looking. You're fully looking, right? You're not pretending to look between their eyes or, those gimmicks that they tell people who don't know how to make eye contact. No, you have to look at their eyes. So much is revealed via the eyes. That saying, people might think it's corny, but it's completely true. It's true. Guys ask, oh, how do you tell if someone's got a soul, or if he's an NPC? Look at him. Look at her. Look at the girl that you're feeding over. Like, is there anything there? Look at her eyes. It's going to tell you everything. I talked about the 1,000 cock stare a couple of videos ago. Girls who, there's nothing there. They've just seen, hello dick. There's nothing there. Their eyes are dull, right? There's no, there's no brightness to their eyes, right? It's dull. There's no luster, right? Nothing's there. Nothing's there, man. But I mean, she looks good, I guess, right? She looks good. Now, don't go out here and, comment, my condolences to you. Also, I didn't intend for this to be that at all. Seriously. This is just an observation that I made. Again, I think I process and I see death in a different way than a lot of people. So to me, it's not, people think it's the end, but it's not the end. So, all the antiques during funerals and humans doing what they do, it's just completely unnecessary. And, it's just a sign of an unevolved, being, the relationship you had was with the soul. Well, the soul doesn't die, right? Again, it's all energy. So you just go back to where you came from, unless you're someone who can't break this reincarnation cycle, then that's a different story.